quickly set up one thing right here. I wish to assure everyone, no, I will not be live blogging my my presentation here. Also, for once, no, let's kick that off and going. Okay. In a discussion on the internet site I Love Music, or ILM for short, one participant recently asked his fellow board members for assistance with an Erykah Badu song title. Quote, "So what is Jump Up in the Air actually called? Jump up in the air and stay there? Jump up in the air, parenthesis, and stay there, end parenthesis. Jump up in the air, parenthesis, stay there, parenthesis." He followed up that request with a further comment. "It's when I ask questions like those that I reflect on how Last FM has ruined my life." His request and comment is a perfect summary of the kind of position that we, collectively, if conditionally, now find ourselves in. We are a group shaped by access to technology and the time and interest spent on those things we consider most dear. We possess the knowledge, conscious or implied, that we are no longer simply listeners of music or even consumers of it in a previously understood sense. Using technological resources only fairly recently developed, we are collators of information. We are identifiers of sound, resources of reference. In a recent piece for Paste magazine, Listening to My Life, Lost in the Shuffle, Maura Johnston pointed to this state with her characteristically well-observed ambivalence. Quote, "As much as I've become used to clicking through my library over the past few months, this transformation of music into something post-physical freaks me out. There was value in music having a physical presence, even those records that you'd only pull out for very specific reasons reminded you of their existence during a routine house cleaning. Now it's easy for songs to get lost in the shuffle. The labeling can be faulty. The artist name could be in a weird nether region of your library that you never scroll through." As did the ILM user, Johnston touches on the issue of correct naming, to which I will return. Yet even more telling is her use of a common word twice within the course of the paragraph, a word that appears at the top of the left-hand column in every standard iTunes window. She speaks of her collection not as a collection, but as a library. And as she has her library, she has her self-chosen role as the curator of that collection, as the librarian. We are all librarians now. It does not matter if we have a formal degree. We are nonetheless our librarians, electronic librarians, or to use a more current term of the field, we are all information scientists in an online world. As noted, this state is conditional. It is based on everything from access to cheap energy and technology, to the availability of information infrastructure, to the economics of personal time. It seems permanent without actually being permanent. Yet, here we are. In a world where those born at the start of this millennium will never have not known Google, iTunes, YouTube, Twitter. The names of these companies and their exact products are not always as important as the assumptions and the tools they provide. Everything they encompass, the new baselines of experience that have been created. Now, it is hardly something new that we are librarians or experts on collections in general. The physical objects generated which captured performances from the original wax cylinders forward were over time seen less as novelty, more as something that could possess a longer-term value. If you wanted to know what it was that you had heard and wanted to return to it, you had to organize and be able to search for it. But it is important to note that the original time of this historical moment itself saw the codification of the home book library as a key status symbol, something that a middle-class household had to possess. It is one of the greatest legacies of the European Victorian age, and remains a powerful one to this day. Think of the lingering appeal via advertisements that some in my age group or older may remember about needing to have a really good set of encyclopedias at home, or reference books, or a collection of the great novels. The development of recorded audio provided a new extension of this impulse. Using America alone as an example, within a few decades, the idea of the quality record collection was commonplace, with labels and marketers attending to new canons, from the classical tradition to jazz to Broadway musicals, from there into the archives of rock, soul, funk, metal, dub, hip-hop, the list continues. The record shelves of my youth, filled with vinyl by my parents, was no less important a possession, a presumed necessity, than the books on the walls. By the time I started my own collection of CDs, I was working within a very well understood approach, and the groundwork was already well created for the upending of it all via the internet and modern computing. For myself, I found writing this way to be absolutely fascinating, worth the trip. but this is far from a universal feeling. Johnston's piece is one example of this ambivalence. In a piece last December in the Boston Globe, Untouchable, Jeremy Eichler vented more directly. At one point, his complaint was very familiar and incomplete. Quote, "For a real collector, the hunt to find an object can at once take on the dimensions of sport, art, and life's quest. Even a casual music lover can appreciate the feeling of working hard to track down a particular recording, thumbing through the bins, or scouring the holdings of used music stores. Today's increasingly preferred mode of acquiring music, downloading, is a surreally effortless activity. A few clicks of the mouse, and as if some cosmic spigot has been opened, the music pours onto your hard drive. If you are converting a large CD collection, there are services that will do the entire thing for you. It has become, in some senses, too easy." End quote. The language in this would require endless unpacking to be studied in thorough detail, starting with the third word, real. Instead, I call your attention to what is absent in this passage, and what has often been absent in similarly phrased stories over these last few years. The step before the search. What do his idealized real collector and his presumably deeply unreal computer user need before they begin their searches? They need to know what they are looking for. How do they know what they are looking for? What information do they have to hand? How do they use that information? Is that information easily gathered? And is it accurate? And will it lead them to what they want to find or hope that they might find? These are the questions that dominate the work of librarians, of information scientists. For some decades in this computer era, the cliché has been, per Canadian writer Bruce Sterling's endlessly referred to and nearly always redacted phrase, "information wants to be free." A more aspirational reworking would surely be, "information wants to be found." We are here to talk about information that presumably wants to be found, the musical creation that its creators want people to hear. Per Dr. Seuss, if the Who's that lived on Horton the Elephant's puffball had to shout, "We are here," as loud as they could to avoid being destroyed, the musicians of the world must shout all the louder, or if not shout, at least find a way to see that others can find their way back to them. It is the eternal problem that any and all artists have, to capture the attention, to be found. In 1998, in the online journal Erminaut, Chris Fujiwara's essay, Disintermediated, addressed what has proved to be a series of relevant issues for the current state of such research in general, though his focus was literary rather than musical. But to quote a concern that has essentially come true, quote, "Claims have been made that the internet, with its potential to link together unlimited stocks of digitally represented knowledge, will disintermediate the library and the university, both subject to the fatal disadvantages of spatial location and world time," end quote. What do people use to search for music in the present day? Do they use the Library of Congress or their local libraries? These are options, but clearly not the most popular ones. Instead, people can use retailers, sellers like Amazon or Apple, who employ their own staff to work with artists and labels to catalog material. But they are not the only sources. Not in this world of Last.fm, of Wikipedia, of YouTube, of Discogs.com, of eternal Google queries. The contributors there may take their cues from these formal sources, or be obsessive catalogers themselves, or they may not be. On ILM, the same poster whose quote was noted at the start of this presentation said elsewhere that another poster had once observed, quote, "Our brave new digital future sometimes feels like a lot of unpaid data entry work," end quote. I knew that would work. It is work approached by each person as they choose to approach it. There is no formal training in place, and there likely will never be.